We are a week away from spring training, and on this episode, we're going through the best case, worst case, and most realistic case scenarios for the Texas Rangers in the 2023 season. All that and more on this episode of Locked On Rangers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Rangers, your daily Texas Rangers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are locked on to the Texas Rangers. I'm Bryce Patrick, a cripplingly addicted Texas Rangers fan since 2010, the founder and host for all 4 seasons of this Locked On Rangers podcast. Thank y'all so much for making Locked On Rangers your first listen every single day. If you're not already, you can follow me on Twitter at Bryce Patrick. You can follow this show at Locked On Rangers and subscribe on YouTube, where the best way you can help grow the show is to comment any single thing below. Before we get into today's episode about the best case, worst case, and most realistic case scenarios for the Texas Rangers in 2023, this episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. Now, let's talk about some scenarios. Fangraphs recently released their projections for the standings this year, and no surprise, in the AL West, they have the Houston Astros at the top of the division, the Mariners and Angels tied at second in the division, 5 games behind the Astros at 85 wins, Astros at 90 wins, which seems honestly a little low. And then the Rangers at 79 and 83 in 4th place, 6 games behind the Angels and Mariners and 7 games ahead of the Oakland A's. But they have the Rangers winning the wild card chances at 17.6%, making the playoffs 23.4%, winning the World Series 0.8%, and winning the division 5.8%. Now, I think those division odds and World Series odds are maybe right around. I think winning the division is not super likely. Winning the World Series, maybe they should bump that up to a 1%. Still, I mean, even the Astros, who are probably almost assuredly the favorites in all of baseball, have a 9.1% World Series win chance, according to this metric. But only having them at 90 wins is curious. But I think 79 and 83 is a little low. So we're going to go through some of the best and worst case scenarios. Let's start with the best, because everyone likes to start off with seeing the best and what's the most exciting. So best case is based on health. All of this is going to come down to health, especially to the health of one Jacob deGrom. deGrom is projected, according to Fangraphs, to throw 172 innings. I think I feel good about that. I would feel really, really great if he threw 172 innings for the Rangers. If he hits 180, then that is best case scenario. Anywhere 180 and above. I don't know how much more he'd go than 180. I think he's going to be healthy this year. I feel really good about it. I've talked extensively about it for the past 2 months since they signed deGrom, that I think that his injury history is really not that checkered. I mean, he had a couple of weird seasons the last 2 years, but for the most part in his career, he was really, really healthy. The Rangers gave him a full green flag. Their medical staff, which is one of the best in the entire league, gave him all of the tests that they needed to do. Very strenuous physical, and they said, yeah, he's probably going to hold up. Nothing that he suffered last year, which was a shoulder injury, which had me a little concerned because shoulder injuries are always pretty concerning. They said that's not going to affect him this year, and that really, again, I think he has the potential to make this deal look like an underpay and make the rest of the league look just incredibly stupid. The guy has just been incredible for the last 3 seasons. For his entire career, he's borderline Hall of Famer. Depending on how he holds up in this contract, I think that will decide his fate of whether he goes to the Hall of Fame or not. If he wins a 3rd Cy Young, then he is almost assuredly going into the Hall of Fame, and I think he could definitely do that with the Rangers. But he's just been so stinking good when healthy. He doesn't walk anybody, strikes everybody out. He is just the perfect prototype of a pitcher, and I absolutely love him being on this team. But it's not just the health of him that is going to determine how far these Rangers go. They need probably 150 innings from 3 out of the 4 guys in the rotation that I have questions about their health. That is literally everyone except for Martin Perez. I don't think that his health is a question. Can he be a similar version of himself? I think if Martin Perez is like 80% of the version that we saw last year, then this team is going to the playoffs. Like, that is just, I feel very, unless there is some injury to deGrom or Heaney or Eovaldi, I should say. I mean, sizable injuries to those guys where they miss like multiple months. But if the Rangers can get 150 plus innings out of 3 of these 4, deGrom, Eovaldi, Gray, and Heaney, then this is a playoff team. This is one of the better rotations in all of baseball. I'd say I'd put it honestly third behind the Yankees and the Mets. Those guys have absolutely stacked rotations and a little bit more depth at the top end, but the Rangers have the best pitcher in baseball, and that always gives you a chance to be in the conversation for the best rotation in baseball, and they have a lot of quality depth. 5 guys that are quality starters. Honestly, I'd say they go 7 deep at the rotation. I mean, they also have Jake Odorizzi, who I think will probably end up making some starts. If he makes fewer than 6 starts this year, that is a best case scenario, because that means that all of your ideal starting pitchers, all the guys that you signed, all the guys who you want in your starting rotation who have that upside, they are making starts and they are healthy, and you can just keep Jake Odorizzi as a very, very effective long man. But also Mitch Garver's health is going to be a big deal this year, like it was last year. I think that if he was a little bit healthier, then the Rangers could have performed just a little bit better. I don't think him being fully healthy for the entire season would have made a difference in them having like a winning season or challenging for playoffs or anything, but I think it definitely would have made a big difference. And also, I think Seager getting his offensive mojo back, being more like his old self while still maintaining those elite power numbers at Globe Life Field, I think that is going to make a big difference. I think defensively he will hold up just fine from the shift. His baseball reference projections have him at an 806 OPS with 25 home runs next year and 25 doubles, on base in the 330s, 337 to be specific. I think that's a little on the low side. I really loved what I saw from him last year. I know that he was just absolutely robbed by the shift more than anybody in all of baseball, but I mean, he was able to hit very well against the shift in 2020 and 21. Both those years he had an OPS over 900. That's kind of what I'm looking for him this year. Get that slugging percentage up over 500, which I think he can do with a few more singles being looped in there, and I think that will just help raise his confidence a little bit about his swing. I mean, everything, all of his projected numbers, all of his expected numbers last year were all through the roof, just as high as they've ever been. And I still don't really know specifically. It's not just the shift that kept those numbers from being amazing in actuality as opposed to just in theory. So I don't know. I'm thinking that the shift is going to just do wonders for him, and just him bouncing back, knowing what it's like to be in Texas, hopefully being on a little bit more of a winning team. I'd say pretty much definitely being on more of a winning team should help him get back to the Corey Seager of old. And I don't think that Marcus Semien is going to be one of the worst players in baseball for the first 2 months of the season. I feel pretty confident in saying that it was a one-time thing. Maybe he won't just bust out of the gates, but I think that he will be a lot better to start the season this year than he was last year. Coming up, we're going to get into the worst case scenario and a more realistic scenario. But first, this episode is brought to you by Built Bar. If you're looking for a delicious treat, but you don't want all the fat and calories, then you have got to try a Built Bar. We just got through the holidays, and I know my goal is to eat a little bit healthier this year. If you're like me and you want to eat healthier, but you don't want to compromise on taste, then man, I have got just the thing for you. You've got to try some Built Bars. They are delicious. They are covered in 100% chocolate. They are soft. They are easy to chew. They are delicious. They've got all kinds of different flavors, and now you can get them at Built.com, where there is free shipping through Valentine's Day. So if you want to go and get them that way, the traditional way, but you don't have to sit and wait around like you used to. You can go pick them up at your local Walmart or your local Sam's Club. Go get yourself a box. You have got to try a Built Bar. You can thank me later. Now, let's look at the worst case scenario. This is, again, almost entirely all around. A lot of this season, a lot of the fate of the Rangers revolves around Jacob deGrom. If deGrom is hurt and misses significant time, I'm talking about multiple months, or God forbid the entire season, the Rangers are pretty much screwed. Like, that's just the state of things. That's where they are. The rest of the rotation does have a lot of depth, and I think they won't be a 100-loss team or anything, but they're not going to be, they'll be a little bit better than last year's team, but not nearly to the degree that they want to be. I mean, adding the third baseman like Josh Young, as opposed to the kind of rotation stable that they've had for the last, I don't know, basically since Beltre has left, there has not been a super stable offensive force at third base. I mean, IKF did really well there defensively for the years that he was there. Asdrubal Cabrera was fine for a year. And we definitely saw some moments from Josh Smith, a little bit from Josh Young, and from Ezekiel Duran last year. I think having Young there full time, his bat is going to be a big upgrade over what they've had. But still, I think that if the Rangers have multiple of these guys, multiple of their starting pitchers that they brought in, if they have significant injuries, then, I mean, the rotation is solid and there is depth there. But if you lose from the top end, if Eovaldi and deGrom both are hurt for significant stretches, and we've seen Jon Gray have some struggles with injuries, and we saw Heaney last year only pitched 70-something innings, and I mean, Fangraphs is projecting him for 133 innings this year, which I think would be good. But still, the Rangers definitely need the top end of their rotation to stay healthy. There is also a scenario where Nathaniel Lowe regresses a little bit. He had a breakout season last year. I don't think he's going to regress, but there's definitely a scenario where he continues to struggle with those fastballs. Pitchers get more aggressive with challenging with that, and he's not able to adjust as well. There is a very likely scenario even where Leote just kind of goes back to the second half Leote. He doesn't reach those same heights, and the Rangers have to think about benching him for Bubba Thompson. There's also a scenario where Jonah Heim is more second half Jonah Heim than first half Jonah Heim, and the Rangers have to start thinking about making an upgrade at catcher. I mean, there's definitely some scenarios where things don't go the Rangers' way, maybe even likely scenarios, but I feel good about this team and their future. But we're still diving into those significant downgraded scenarios, and maybe these defensive restrictions, maybe that makes the Rangers think about moving Corey Seager off of shortstop a little bit sooner than later, because, I mean, he doesn't have the elite range that you typically would like to see in a shortstop. He doesn't have a super strong arm, which was a little surprising watching him every day at shortstop. I thought his arm would be a little bit better than it was, but it wasn't super great. And maybe Marcus Semien starts to show a little bit of signs of aging. He is a little bit on the older side. He's going to be 32 this year. And if he starts aging this year in the contract already, then that's going to be really, really concerning. I'm hoping that he holds up because he has taken care of his body so well. He has been so healthy for the vast majority of his career, but he is getting older. And so there is a scenario where Mitch Garver has a significant injury and Adolis Garcia. I mean, there's a lot of different things that could go wrong for the Texas Rangers. I mean, Mitch Garver's health has been just a huge question mark. I think he is going to be, I said this last year, and I'm saying the same thing this year. Mitch Garver's health is going to be a huge linchpin for this team in terms of how well they can do, because we saw the ceiling of his bat in May. He was absolutely phenomenal when he was hitting in that month. We saw what he did in 2019 when he won a Silver Slugger while playing fewer than 130 games. I think that was, fewer than 100 games, 93 games, and he still won a Silver Slugger because he hit 31 home runs in that span. We know what he can do when healthy, but it's the when healthy that has been a huge question mark. He's only played 100 games once in his career. That was back in 2018, his rookie season. His health has been a huge question mark. There was obviously an inherent big risk in trading for him. The Rangers didn't give up a whole lot. I mean, Ronnie Enriquez is fine, and IKF was fine, but I felt really good about that trade at the time. Even looking back now, I still feel pretty good about it. His projections aren't super encouraging for next year. Baseball Reference is projecting him for 332 plate appearances, 13 bombs, and a 724 OPS. That's not super great. If you're looking at his Fangraphs projections, they have him at 442 plate appearances and a 319 on base and a 432 slugging percentage, a 1.7 WAR season, which I think would be fine. But they really don't have him catching a whole lot. They have him DHing for most of his at-bats, which I think there's definitely a scenario where that happens, but I don't necessarily think it is the most likely scenario. And there's also another scenario where Josh Young continues to struggle like last season. Fangraphs is not super high on his projections. They have him as a 2.1 WAR player. They have his on base at 298 and 436 for his slugging percentage, which I think is really freaking low for what Josh Young is going to do. I love him. I love his offensive approach. I was really confused him not working a walk until his 12th game or whatever last year. That is not him. That is not the kind of batter that he is. I think he was still rehabbing a little bit at the major league level. Wasn't completely healthy, I don't think, even at the end of the season. But I'm hoping we can finally have a spring training where Josh Young can just be healthy, go out there and make the opening day roster, have an opening day start, and kick butt from the beginning and challenge for the AL Rookie of the Year. Coming up, we're going to look at a most likely scenario, what the Rangers should look like, and why I definitely have some issues with the Fangraphs projections. But first, this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. This year, the only app you need at your Super Bowl party is FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. We are so excited about our new sports betting partner for Locked On because they are the #1 sportsbook in America, FanDuel. And if you are new to FanDuel, that's even better. They have so many great features to make betting on sports fun and easy. Download the FanDuel app now so you can bet Super Bowl 57 with a no-sweat first bet. You'll get up to $3,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. FanDuel lets you bet on everything from the money line to point spread to who will score a touchdown. Their app is safe, secure, and super easy to use. Best of all, you get paid your winnings instantly. So join FanDuel today at FanDuel.com/lockedon to claim your no-sweat first bet on Super Bowl 57. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Now, let's take a look at the most realistic scenario, because there are a lot of different scenarios out there, and I think that Fangraphs' projection of under 80 wins is a little on the low side, honestly. I think 79 is a little aggressive at how poor the Rangers will do, and having the Angels at 85 wins, it's like they haven't seen the Angels. Yes, I mean, I look what the Angels did this year, and I almost like it a little bit more than what the Rangers did in general for them. I think that they made some really, really smart moves. I think they've got a decent team on paper, but again, it's the freaking Angels. So things are always going to go wrong. They made some smart decisions in the rotation. They've got Tyler Anderson, Patrick Sandoval, Reed Detmers, Jose Suarez, and of course, Shohei freaking Ohtani. They've got some decent arms in the bullpen that I think are going to be fine. And obviously they have Mike Trout and Shohei Ohtani. And Taylor Ward had a really, really great year last year. And theoretically, Anthony Rendon is going to be back this year, but I really don't know about that. They also signed Gio Urshela. They also have Jared Walsh there, who's pretty solid. They also made another signing, Brandon Drury, who I kind of like a lot for them. A pretty decent signing there. So they made some smart moves, but I feel like the Rangers rotation is better. They have a better top end. I feel better about their depth. They have, consistent veteran depth as opposed to the Angels starters, a lot of whom are young, and Detmers, Sandoval, and Suarez. All those guys are pretty young and pretty unproven. They had pretty solid years last year. I mean, Detmers had the no-hitter, but I just don't think that the Rangers are going to finish behind them this year. And I really think the Rangers could end up finishing ahead of the Mariners. I think a realistic case scenario, maybe we get 150 to 170 innings of deGrom. Maybe there's just a slight injury there. Maybe the Rangers are just very, very cautious because they spent so much money on him and they want him to be healthy. He is coming off 2 injured seasons and 1 season before that where he was only able to throw innings in the 60s because it was the shortened season. So maybe they will try and be pretty careful with him there. But I think there's probably going to be one of these 3 new pitchers that is going to suffer an injury that keeps them out for multiple months. Or maybe it's Jon Gray. One of those that category of 4, basically the everybody but Martin Perez. I think there is definitely going to be one of those players that suffers an injury that keeps him out for multiple months. I mean, Eovaldi has an extreme injury history. Heaney has a pretty recent injury history. Jon Gray as well. Jacob deGrom, obviously. But as long as it's not deGrom, then I feel like the Rangers are still going to be contending for a wild card spot. They have a vastly improved team. They didn't upgrade that much offensively, if really almost at all. But I think just the addition of Josh Young, I talked about it earlier, but I think he is going to be a huge addition. I think Ezekiel Duran is probably going to take over in left field. I really, really like that guy. I feel really, really good about what he can do and about him providing a major impact. The Rangers have one of the best pitching staff. They have one of the best offensive infields, and I believe will have one of the better defensive outfields in all of baseball. All of those things, plus a bullpen that I think really is being underrated. I mean, Fangraphs just really does not believe in Brock Burke. They have him as a .5 WAR player, a 3.72 ERA next year. They have Hernandez's ERA over 4. They have Leclerc's ERA in the high 3s, 3.86 next year. They have Hernandez being a 0 WAR player, and I think that's just incredibly disingenuous and wrong. The same with Taylor Hearn. They have him as a 0 WAR player with an ERA of 4.29. That's not who he is. Both of those guys are going to be very, very effective relievers. And I think that the worst case in terms of wins, I think somewhere in the, let's say, where the Rangers last year, not quite 100 losses, 94 losses. So a 72 to 75 win team is kind of the basement for this team. I think the best case scenario is maybe they crack 90 wins, even if you have a fully healthy rotation. I think 90 to, everything goes really, really right. You have like absolutely no injuries, then maybe you can get 92. That's not a realistic thing, but I think a realistic case for this Rangers team is somewhere in that 85 win category, somewhere between 83 and 88 wins, I think is where this team will probably end up. And that's definitely good enough to fight for a wild card. In this scenario, it is good enough to be tied for second place in the AL West. I think the Rangers would absolutely take that. The Mariners have a pretty good team. They made some smart moves. They have a young core, but again, they are still pretty young. They don't have a whole lot of veterans who have been on winning teams for multiple years. I could definitely see them taking a step back this year. Granted, that's what a lot of people thought last year, but they really made some good moves to kind of shore up what they did last year. And with the Angels, I don't trust it. I really don't trust what they're doing. They made some smart decisions. Ohtani is going to be on his way out. He's probably still going to be amazing. Same with Mike Trout, and I can't trust the health of Rendon. It feels like they're putting a lot of pressure on Rendon to come back and be healthy and be, live up to his contract. I just don't think he's going to do that at this point. And as much as I really wanted Rendon at the time, I'm really glad the Rangers didn't end up signing him. But I feel like second place in division, somewhere in the second or third wild card. I don't know exactly who's going to come out on top in the AL East. It's definitely going to be a fight for the Rangers for that first wild card. I think they're going to challenge for it. I feel really, really good about this team. A lot of it is going to come down to, again, the things that I talked about, the health of these starting pitchers. But if they get fairly good health, then I think this team should be a lot better than people think it. What confuses me the most about Fangraphs is that they have projected very healthy seasons for the Rangers starting pitching. They have Martin Perez at 181 innings, which I think is lowballing him. They really just don't believe at all in what he did last year, but they don't like contact pitchers. Their stuff is more geared towards guys with nasty stuff and strikeout numbers. They have Jon Gray at 172 innings. Same with deGrom. They have Eovaldi at 152 innings and Heaney at 133. If the Rangers get this kind of production from their starting rotation, this kind of health, then I don't understand the scenario where this team is that bad. They have a little bit of regression for Nathaniel Lowe. They really are not high on Mitch Garver's offense. They are really not super high on Adolis Garcia. They're actually pretty low on him. Again, they have his on base at 288 for the year, a 2-WAR player. He's been a 3-4 win player for the last 2 years. I don't know what more he has to do to prove to people that he is a legit above average starting corner outfielder. Like, he is a very good player, and I don't think Fangraphs or most of the league really recognizes that. They have Josh Smith winning the job, or getting most of the at-bats in left field as a .7 WAR player. They have Bubba Thompson with 196 plate appearances as a .1 WAR player. I don't think that's necessarily accurate, and I think that we'll definitely see more than 28 plate appearances from Ezekiel Duran in left field. They have Jackson Clint Frazier at 70 plate appearances in left field, but Ezekiel Duran at only 28. They do have a Duran at 63 plate appearances in center field. I could see a scenario where he kind of takes over in center field for a little bit. I don't know that's necessarily the most likely, but they also have him spelling Josh Young quite a bit at third base, which is a scenario that I kind of like, because I really like Duran's glove over Josh Young's glove, and his arm at third base is where that kind of an arm is supposed to be. So I think a realistic case scenario has the Rangers at somewhere in the 85 win mark, maybe pushing a little bit more, depending on the health of this rotation, depending on the health of Mitch Garver, and how some of these young up-and-comers step into their roles, and how these veterans either continue to play at a high level or start to drop off a little bit. But we'll see. I didn't even talk about the prospect angle of maybe some of the young guns coming up, because I don't see a scenario where somebody who doesn't make the opening day roster, unless they want to put Ezekiel Duran in AAA to start the season, which I don't see happening. But I don't see a huge prospect impact this year as much as I will see it a little bit more next year, when the Jack Leiters, Owen Whites, and Evan Carters start to make their way up to the big leagues, hopefully, if things are going well with their development. But yeah, I'm really skeptical of this Fangraphs projection at 79 wins. I think that is definitely on the lower end of what this Rangers team can and will do next year. But again, really hoping for health of old Nate Eovaldi, of Jacob deGrom, Andrew Heaney, Jon Gray, and everybody on this Rangers team. But still very excited for the future of this team, very excited for the present of this team. Going to be a very fun year, and very much looking forward to podcasting about a fun and maybe even winning baseball team. But that's going to do it for this edition of Locked On Rangers. We'll be back again on Friday with a little closer look at the farm system and some top 100 rankings that came out. But for your second listen, speaking of prospects, go check out Locked On MLB Prospects. Host Lindsey Crosby is a prospect encyclopedia, and he is going deep on the MLB stars of tomorrow. It is free and available wherever you get your podcast. Thank you all so much for listening and subscribing, and until next time, don't forget to enjoy baseball.